Record. Okay, so earthworms, and we start out with a question that will be answered at the end. Are they animal or are they insect?
Wow.
I'll let you ponder that as we go through this. And we will first start with just some basic facts. Earthworms are herbivores. They are, of course, invertebrates. They, as I think a lot of people know, can regenerate lost body segments. And surprisingly, there are 4,400 species of earthworms. As a lot of people know, I think they are beneficial as soil engineers. And this was very surprising to me. They can live up to 20 years.
I had no idea.
Yeah, I didn't either. And fossilized worms, similar to earthworms, have been found by paleontologists that have been dated at 600 million years old. That puts them back all the way back to the Devonian period. And the first thing we will look at in detail is reproduction with the earthworms. Now, they are hermaphrodites, meaning they have both male and female sexual organs. And they are what is known as parthenogenic, which means that the embryos can grow and develop without fertilization, which is an unusual fact. And while they typically mate above ground, they can and do mate both underground and above ground. They are attracted to one another by scent, pheromones, and their mating ritual involves the two worms lying head to tail on the surface of the soil, typically, and they both, being hermaphrodites, they both exchange sperm while bound together in a mucus covering. The life cycle begins with egg sacs or cocoons, which are created in the clitellum, which is that thick light-covered band of skin that you see in the center of the creature, and that creates a viscous fluid, and that is what forms the cocoon. And they can generate up to 20 eggs in that cocoon, but typically only one baby worm emerges. And the eggs are very hardy. They can survive extreme weather conditions. So they can survive freezing, drought, flooding, etc. And this is what the life cycle looks like. It's very, very simple. From the clitellum, as we mentioned, comes the cocoon that can have up to 20 eggs in it. And the hatchling comes from the cocoon and grows into an adult, which then in turn mates.
You know, I remember dissecting earthworms in biology class in high school. But I don't ever remember talking about how new earthworms were formed. And how big are these cocoons? Can you see them?
They're very, very small.
Okay.
Very, very small. You've seen baby snakes before, and the baby worms are, you see a like, let's say a baby gray rat snake is like maybe 3-4 inches long, and a baby earthworm is like maybe 1/4 of an inch long.
Hmm.
If that. They're very small and they're very thin. Now, brains. I found this very interesting too. Earthworms don't just have a brain, they have 2 brains that are bilobed, just like ours, and they have a central nervous system. In fact, it's a complex central nervous system, as you see from the illustration here. And the brains control what they feel and how they move. They can actually feel pain, but they do not feel emotions, and they are incapable of analyzing things or thinking critically. They can't reason, but they are able to feel things, and the brain does control their movements. Along with that, within their anatomy, their digestive and vascular systems are also complex as the nervous system, and also actually as complex as ours is. The nervous system runs the full length of the body, and the digestive system runs nearly the length of the body. If you can see the cursor here, the mouth is right here on the very tip of the body on the front end. And the intestine actually runs all the way down to this point right here. This is where the anus is, right here. So that's the end of the digestive tract. So the the digestive tract runs this whole length here. It's almost, the full length of the body. It's like 7/10 the length of the body. But the nervous system does run the entire length of the body. And the vascular system does as well. The other thing about this that's kind of unusual, and again, they have both male and female reproductive organs, and those organs, and as we said, when they mate, they lay at opposite ends to each other. As I've got circled here, the male and female reproductive organs are on opposite sides of the body. And I've got them circled here. The male reproductive organs are here on this side of the body, and the female organs are a little bit lower on the body here on the opposite side. So that's kind of how, this is kind of why they lay at opposite ends of each other when they mate.
So then each of them, since they're hermaphrodites, so each of them then would produce the cocoon. Or
yes, because again, they both trade sperm with each other. It's not a one-way street. So yes, they both produce the cocoons. So now, I don't know why that popped up. What are we doing here? There we go. This was a song in the 1970s, you might remember, by the Grand Funk Railroad. Come on, baby, and do the locomotion with me.
Oh, sure.
Earthworms move about by means of waves of muscular contractions, and I didn't know this either, which alternately, if you've seen them move, shorten and lengthen the body. And this is known as peristalsis. And how they do this, how they're able to do this, is their body is a tube of muscles within another tube of muscles. And one muscle set runs lengthwise and the other runs widthwise. And it's the opposing movement of those tubes that allows them to travel. Also, they have tiny retractile bristles on their skin, very, very tiny. You really can't see them with the naked eye. And they look like hairs, and those allow them to tightly grip surfaces. And now here's just a rough illustration. The black line represents their whole body. And again, you have a tube within a tube, and the top one is muscles running widthways, and the bottom one, or running lengthwise, and the bottom one is muscles running widthwise. And they are one inside each other, and it's the motion of those muscles contracting against each other that allows it to move the way it does. And when you see an earthworm move, you know, it kind of slinks along.
It's like that, so they wiggle.
Yeah, you see that expansion,
Yeah.
contraction. It's not at all like what a snake does, which, you know, when a snake moves, it is expanding and contracting its spinal column to make its ribs move back and forth inside its skin.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it moves. This is totally unlike that. It's
because these don't have a spinal column.
No,
right?
this
So
is
it's
totally
just the
different.
muscles.
It's
Yeah.
two different sets of muscles moving against each other. So it's a whole different thing, and that's how they do it. And then what about that slime? Well, the slippery mucus created by an earthworm's skin does something special for it. It allows it to burrow and travel through the hardest soil, like in our case, our rock hard clay that we have here. It allows it to travel through cracks and logs and in between rocks and cracks and rocks. And between that slime and those skin bristles, it can virtually go anywhere. It can travel on and around and through any surface. It is the only ground dwelling and soil dwelling creature that can do that. And it's because of the slime and because of the bristles. It's very specialized in that. And what's for dinner? What's on the menu? And I believe we talked about this in another program, they eat the soil itself. They have a very muscular stomach that crunches up the soil that they eat, and it digests bits of organic matter that's in the soil, as well as some mineral fragments within the soil. You know, just like us, we have certain minerals that our body needs, you know, like iron, for example, in sodium and things like that. Well, they have very similar needs, so they take that in as well as organic matter. And then whatever it doesn't need, it voids the remainder from its digestive system, just like we do. And that refuse is, and we discussed this, is known to farmers and gardeners as beneficial worm casings. Farmers and gardeners pay to buy worm casings to put in their gardens, to put in their compost. And it's a very beneficial byproduct from the worms.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I mentioned this before, when you buy cartons of night crawlers for fishing, what they are actually, that substrate that they're actually in the cartons, it's not dirt, it is worm casings. That black loam that they are in, that is worm casings, and that's good stuff.
I just always think when I find a worm in my soil that's a really good thing that there's worms there, because it means my soil is somewhat healthy, even though it is that clay.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
It would be worse without them.
Right. Yes. And we're going to talk about that in just a second here. Now, they are, as we're getting into, beneficial creatures. Besides the burrowing they do, which we know creates air and water pockets in the soil, which is beneficial for the root systems of our plants, of our trees and other plants. They also drag leaves and bits of leaves and other plant debris down into the soil, which decomposes in the soil, makes the soil richer. Again, creates the air pockets and allows water to drain through. They are vital in that way in creating rich, fertile soils from dense, infertile clays and other soils. It's interesting that in some research that was done, earthworms were monitored and taken from a 1 square meter of meadowland over the course of a year. And it was found in this research that each worm brought about 17.64 pounds of soil to the surface from underneath annually. So they actually, in doing this, were creating topsoil. So 17 pounds of soil, almost 18 pounds of soil, that's about, per earthworm, that's about 3/4 of a 5-gallon pail full.
Mm-hmm.
So that's quite a bit of soil to turn into topsoil when you consider how many earthworms there probably are in a square meter of earth.
Right.
That's a pretty good return. But now, unfortunately, and we know birds and some other animals like possums and skunks prey on worms. Moles are actually the greatest threat, because they prey on them as well, and they're always underground. One mole can eat up to 50 earthworms in one day, and they consume even more than that in the wintertime. They, for whatever reason, it's unknown, moles turn more to earthworms and other insects for their food more so than roots in the wintertime. So they're very destructive to worm populations, which is really a shame for the earthworms. Now, to go back to something you were talking about, on the left here, I found this food web of the compost pile. And as you can see, right down here where I've got my cursor, they are what is called first level consumers in the food web. Earthworms are where my cursor goes. It's right here. They are with snails and slugs and the woodlouse and ticks and some other varieties of worms and pill bugs and so on. And they are actually preyed on by, up here, millipedes, ants, believe it or not, several different varieties of beetles within the compost pile. And they, again, they eat dirt, they eat organic residues, which is shown here in the gray, within the compost pile, and they help break those things down. And then along with that, on the right here, we have the soil food web. And earthworms are right here. And of course, we mentioned we have certain mammals that prey on them, moles. Some mice eat them. Possums, occasionally. Skunks, definitely. Skunks are big eaters of worms and slugs and grubs. And again, the worms eat organic matter, and along with that, they eat fungi and bacteria that is in the soil. They even eat decaying organic matter. So they're right here in the middle of the soil food web. So that is their place there. Now, if a person wants to raise them for their garden, it's really fairly simple. On the left here, and there's a lot of information and a lot of different ways of how to do this, but there's a ton of information on this out on the web. On the left here, we have a simple worm bed, and you can raise up to 300 adult worms in a simple 3x3x6 wooden box made of pine or cypress, or you can even use concrete blocks or bricks. And it's filled with a mixture of peat, black loam, and manure, 3-3-3 mixture. And it's covered to protect it from sun and rain. And some real simple feeding instructions here on the right. They like to eat fruit peelings and vegetable scraps, coffee grounds, tea bags, leaf tea, bread, though no big chunks, rice and other leftover grains, grass cuttings after the heating stage, meaning grass cuttings once they've turned brown, once they're no longer green, green garden waste, comfrey nettles, and other dynamic accumulators, animal manures, but not from pets, because pets get anti-worm medications, and that is harmful, obviously, to worms in general. They like scrap paper, newspapers, or napkins that are shredded and wet. They like their food finely chopped. But you don't want to give them too much food because that makes the thing stink. You have to avoid fatty foods because oils can suffocate worms. It's not good for their skin. Onions and garlics are not good for them, as are spicy foods, dairy products, citrus foods, and you want to avoid meats also because, well, who wants flies and maggots around, right? But there's a lot of really good information out there on how you can raise worms. And
I notice it says to use bronze screen lining. Is that because it wouldn't rust? Why do you use bronze, I wonder?
Yeah, probably because it wouldn't rust, and you can get that at the home stores.
Okay.
And it's something that you know, they're not going to chew through that. Wood they can potentially chew through. I don't think you would need the bronze if you're going to use concrete or brick blocks.
But
yeah, there's a lot of information on the web. There's just site after site after site, and tons of YouTube videos on it. Whoop. Oh, why did that? Okay. Okay, so to get back to our original question, are they an insect, an animal, or what?
I think they're an or what.
The answer is, you are right, an or what. Earthworms are not animals, they are not insects. They are simply terrestrial invertebrates. And they occur anywhere on the planet where soil and climate conditions are favorable. In a nutshell, they are pretty much found anywhere except for the Arctic, Antarctica, and places where you have snow year round.
It's pretty amazing.
Yep. So, any questions?
No, but that was very interesting. Worms are kind of intriguing, and
Yeah.
now I feel kind of sad because sometimes when I'm digging, and I know if you accidentally cut one that they'll grow, then there'll be two worms, but now I know that they feel pain. It makes me feel kind of sad.
They will, but now one caveat about this, and I probably should have put it in the presentation and I didn't. If a worm gets cut in half at the clitellum, that it will not recover from. They will actually die if they get cut in half there.
Oh boy.
They can get cut anywhere along the body and regenerate except for right there. If they get cut in half right there, they will die.
Well, unfortunately, when you're digging in the dirt, you really don't know that you cut them until too late.
Right. And I did add one other slide in case there are people that just really do not like worms, or just feel like ick. List of movies featuring worms. And with the exception of Beetlejuice, they are all horror movies.
I've never heard of any of them except Beetlejuice.
And you can tell from the last three, they are still, they're continuing to be made.
Toothworms. Oh, that sounds horrible.
And actually that Mr. Hops versus Bridgeworm, that's like a animated, it's like along the lines of Pixar. It's an animated horror movie. The one I was the most familiar with actually was Tremors, because I know there's been a remake and there's been 3 or 4 sequels of Tremors.
Now these movies that have the worms, are those earthworms, or do they feature other sorts of worms too? Because there are some very undesirable other types of worms.
Other types, Squirm was actual worms. Parasite, Slither, they were like giant worms. Tremors was like absolutely, if you never saw that, absolutely humongous worm that would like just burst up out of the ground, and I mean like Godzilla scale worm. And the first one was pretty terrifying. That one starred Kevin Bacon. But by the time you got to the second and third sequels, and people were in them like Michael Gross and people like that, they really got to be kind of silly. And they were like trying to compete with Jaws sequels and things like that. They kind of really got to be out there in terms of what they were doing with the movies. So these later ones I haven't really seen. I just, saw the trailers.
Right.
Trailers
Funny.
for them.
That's funny.
Okay. So I will stop the share and let's see. Oh, okay. Stop recording.